Okay. Now, when you are addicted to being right, what's going to happen is when you have all the answers, when you are coming in, having your first meeting with a prospect, and they throw you a little bone and you pick it up, and then you have a 30-minute monologue talking about how great you are, what's going to happen is you are going to walk away feeling really good, because when you know your stuff and when you can share your stuff, dopamine gets created in your body. It makes you feel good. It's almost like a joint, right? But your customers,
how would you know that?
I would not, I don't know, but I was told that when you are smoking, that gets your dopamine up. That's why people feel so happy. But what's going to happen is your customers, they are watching you smoking, but you leave them dry. I always say, you know, when we have that kind of addiction to being right, it's almost the same as if you are inviting somebody over for a wine tasting and you are the one who is drinking wine and they're getting only water. You feel good, but they don't.
I'm reminded of a line that I heard that I've given to my kids, and I try to live by. Never learn anything by talking.
Yeah, you never learn anything by talking, correct. Yeah. Another.
You guys have so much trouble dating.
Okay. Well, now you know. Starting today, you can change things. But another big mistake is what I call the direct and honest one-trick pony show. You know, do you know people who say, I'm direct and honest, and that's my style, right? And it may work, but I tell you, I have one of my clients who says, you know, when I go into team meetings, I'm direct and honest, and they know it, and I tell them what is wrong, and that is the end of it, right? And the more we talked about it, the analogy he came up with, all of the awareness that I created for him through asking questions, he said, so are you trying to tell me that when I go into the room, I come in there with a shotgun, boom, 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 you know, like that? That is direct and honest feedback sometimes, where we don't ask for anything, right? I just give you my feedback, whether you like it or not. At least it's direct and honest. We pride ourselves for being honest, but don't realize that sometimes we leave a lot of dead bodies behind. Lack of personal connections. And I really think, you know, what came up with this millennial discussion earlier, I think that is many times where it starts. It's that lack of personal connection, to really try to understand them first and getting into their world and building that personal connection and say, for example, what is it that you like about hip hop? What are you learning from that music? You know, who is your favorite artist there? You know, something like that, where we get into their world and try to understand and wanting to learn. Okay? But I'm just saying, you know, just like how many leaders in companies do you know who don't even know anything personal about their staff? Right?
There are a lot.
There are a lot.
Too many.
Too many.
More than there should be.
More.
But that makes that distinguishes a great leader from a manager or a mediocre
Right.
Leader. The individual who can make those personal connections and who is outgoing and can not only communicate but touch on some commonality, as well as their constant interest in learning.
Mm-hmm.
That interest in constant self-development
Mm-hmm.
and learning is what makes the great leaders stand apart.
Right. Yeah. And the same even applies when it comes to networking, because I know early on when I started to go out to networking, they said, before you even get started about telling who you are and what you do, find out something personal about the other person, right? And make notes on your business card. David is good with making notes, you know. Oh, she has a son, he is playing tennis, and next time he sees this person, says, hey, how is your son doing? Has he made some, you know, what kind of tournaments has he won recently? Or something like that. where we consciously make the effort to know more about the person than only what they do, but also who they are being, because that builds that connection.
Yeah, but it also has to have that element of genuineness.
Of course it does.
If it comes across as being canned,
Correct.
it's insincere and it's fake, it's fraud.
Correct.
It's, you know, it's ineffective.
It is, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm talking here since. Right. Another one is what I call unsolicited advice. Have you ever received unsolicited advice? Too often? Okay, yeah. It happens, at least I speak now from my personal experience, it happens a lot in marriages, in partnerships. And I give you an example. I mean, I'm doing something, let's say I'm cutting something up in the kitchen, and my husband comes by and says, you know how you should do that? You should do it like this. And I did not even ask for it. And I can only say, thank you very much. And I'm doing just fine.
And he does that when you got a knife in
he does. Well, yeah. But I mean, I'm just using it as an example where you see that somebody is doing something ineffectively. And instead of asking first, can I share something with you? Can I share something what I noticed? Right? It's just like direct and honest. Hey, the way you are doing it is not working. You know, you should do it like this. Does not work. Puts the other person in defensive mode. Yes, Sebastian.
It's interesting how these differ slightly country to country.
Uh-huh.
Some countries, like unsolicited advice, Europeans are very, my home culture, Netherlands, everybody always gives them.
Okay.
You don't like it. They're also too honest.
Yeah.
But they don't feel that much an addiction to being right.
Yeah.
It's sort of
Right.
argument. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's because there is a definite right way of loading the dishwasher.
Okay. Another one is lack of emotional control and lack of emotional courage. So in other words, people who cannot control their emotions and easily get upset or frustrated and then show it, of course, that can be a big derailer for conversations where then the other person also, where it becomes a shouting match. But then really also the lack of emotional courage, meaning not having the courage to really say what's going on your side and how you feel about something, right? Because again, the reason is there is no trust. And then the belief that others see the world from the same perspective as we do. Has it ever happened to you? I just talked to somebody yesterday who said she was at one of David's group meetings and somebody brought out a case study and they asked for some input around it. And this lady had an answer for a question that was asked, but then she said there was a banker in a room and there was a business consultant and somebody else, and they gave their answers first. And she said, I looked at the question only from an HR perspective. I never looked at it from the finance perspective and the operation perspective, right? So in other words, if a customer comes in, and that is a good thing really when it comes to us building our businesses and here working with each other, it is when we go into a company and have that initial contact and have these initial discovery questions to really not only look at the problem from our perspective and from our field, but really looking at it from different perspectives so that we really can provide the best solution for the customer based on what they share with us. So now think of a person with whom you've recently had maybe a disagreement, conflict, or heated discussion. You have somebody in mind? Too many? Okay, your wife. All right. Well, not wonderful, but then let me ask you this. How often do you have these kind of conversations with her or with anybody really where you have disagreements and conflicts?
Fairly frequently, she's Asian.
Okay.
So we have sort of like cultural difference.
Okay.
And the way she cuts vegetables and things in the kitchen, the knife she uses needs some re-education.
Okay.
Where we tied me to even point it out.
Okay.
And this is a cultural
Okay. Yeah.
And where she gets loud,
Mm-hmm.
very hyper on discussions.
Yeah.
And I remain calm. She accuses me of, even when I say negative things, that sound just the same.
Okay.
So we have some interesting conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you say your wife is Asian?
Asian.
And whereas I speak the one language, hopefully very well, she speaks a native Tagalog, English, a little in Spanish, and a little in German.
Okay. Wow.
So,
you
So-
know when she's cussing you out there. You're right.
So,
She tries it in a couple different languages.
so it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And all that you're saying here, I've been listening to, and I identify
Yeah.
with these things.
Yeah. So here's what happens. I mean, you have these kind of conversations with somebody where there is a disagreement. Maybe somebody gives you unsolicited advice, you're doing something and they try to correct you, right? Or, you know, it's just something where somebody loses their emotional control. What's going to happen is, of course, our body goes into the fight and flight response or reaction, right? It's like our body still perceives it as, okay, here I have to defend myself. So what is going to happen next is, you know, the prefrontal cortex tries to rationalize it and tries to calm things down and tries to see, is there really a tiger out there, or is it just a cat, or is it just, you know, a person who's just making a point that may not be valid. But our amygdala, which is in our limbic brain, you know, she immediately goes into high alert and sees this as a threat. Then what happens next is the hypothalamus sends a message to the pituitary gland, who then sends a message down to the adrenal glands that we are here in a fight, or that we have to run. And the adrenal glands is building up the cortisol, which is called the stress hormone in the body. Let me go further.
You've been in my car with me during traffic.
That's the same kind of thing. But again, that is where a different kind of conversation has to happen with yourself. So the cortisol travels through the blood and tells other body parts to react to stress. So what happens? Our brain, our creative thinking is not required in that moment because it's either fight or flight, running away. So what happens is the blood gets out of the brain and gets into our extremities, right? Gets into our body. It is proven now when people are really stressed out, their IQ goes down by 2 to 5 points, meaning we actually get dumber because that part of our brain is shut down. What else happens is our emotional intelligence goes down. That is where we are reacting, right? And getting frustrated and angry and shouting and getting loud and all of these kind of things. What happens is, of course, our glucose goes up because we need it for fight and flight.